Hey there, welcome back to the channel. Thanks for being here. Well, it's time for another Tools of Tech Tuesday, and today we have an HDMI switcher. And I thought I would show you the one that I bought, give you a couple reasons why you might want to have one, and we'll talk about the good and the bad of this particular one that I bought. So why might you want an HDMI switcher? Well, the first reason is probably the most obvious, and that is you've run out of ports on your TV. So let's say you've got a TV that only has 2 ports, you've already got a game console and a cable box hooked up. And maybe you want to add a Fire TV stick or Apple TV or something like that. Well, you're either going to have to get a new TV with more ports, or you'll have to get an HDMI switcher so you could just hit the buttons and switch from one thing to the other. So the second reason why you might want an HDMI switcher is probably a little less obvious, and it's one of the reasons why I bought one. And that is because I wanted to be able to do some streaming on, say, YouTube or Twitch or whatever, and I wanted to be able to capture different devices, but I didn't want to have to just unplug and replug things back in all the time because that capture card only has one port on it. Now, if you're going to do some capturing or some streaming, you can get away with unplugging and replugging back in for a while, but I wouldn't recommend it for a long time, and here's why. Over time, those wires, and more importantly, the ports on those devices can go bad. And if the port on your device, let's say your capture card or your PS4 or whatever, when that port goes bad, you've got to replace whatever device that port was on. So if your Xbox HDMI port goes bad, well, you're going to end up having to get another Xbox. So it's a lot better just to go ahead and spend 25, 30 bucks on an HDMI splitter and be done with it. Besides, just hitting a button on an HDMI switcher is a lot less work than having to unplug and replug in whatever you want every time you want to switch from one device to the other. So I bought an HDMI switcher on Amazon, and there's plenty of good and bad to tell you about it, but first, let me show you what's in the box. Have a remote. So it looks like we have a button and some indicators here on the front, port on the side, some ports on the back, and the power cord on the other side, and another HDMI port right there. So looks like this one and all of these are the inputs, and this one is the output, and that's the power. Looks like just a standard USB power cord with a little block. That's kind of nice. Kind of disappointed that it didn't come with a HDMI cord though. So if you buy one, make sure you get an HDMI cord. Order one with it. Hey, so just a quick tip here. If you're planning on doing something similar to me, you might want to consider getting some of these. These are color-coded HDMI cables. One has blue on both ends, the others have the different colors on both ends. And so when you're looking at your splitter, you'll know which cable goes to
which device.
I'd like to point out that I really like the design of these tall and thin power plugs, because sometimes you got those big fat ones and it takes up this much room, and then you got another one that takes up that much room, and all of a sudden it takes up more plugs than it needs to, and you don't have as many plugs as you need. So to me, these are cool. So let's start off talking about the good things about this HDMI switcher. And the first thing is, as you'll notice, it has a pretty good rating. It's 4.4 out of 5 stars. Next up, I would say that it ticks off a lot of those boxes that you might be looking for as far as the specs with an HDMI switcher. It supports 4K with HDR at 60 frames per second. It also supports 3D video. It supports multiple different audio codecs. It supports HDMI 2.0 and lower, and HDCP 2.2 and lower. It supports MHL, which essentially just means that if your device is not designed to provide its own power, it's designed to get the power from the HDMI port on your TV, then this HDMI switcher can handle that. It can provide that power. I also like that this HDMI switcher can automatically switch from one device to the other when you turn something on. So let's say I'm using my computer and I want to play some PS4. All I have to do is power on the PS4, and this HDMI switcher just recognizes that and automatically switches to that input. So that's pretty cool. And if I ever want to manually switch to a different input, I can always hit the button right on the HDMI switcher itself or on the remote that it comes with. So I also like that this thing is powered through USB. And that's cool for a couple different reasons. First of all, one of my sisters used to have a cat that liked to chew on power cords. So if your power cord ever gets lost or damaged, then you've probably got 100 of these sitting around anyway. Second, if you run out of spots in your power strip to plug things in, well, a lot of TVs have a USB port, so you can just plug this in to get power from your TV. I also like that this thing is small enough that you could stick it in a lot of different spaces, including you might be able to get some of that double-sided foam tape and stick it on the back of your TV. Finally, one of the biggest pros in my opinion for this thing is the fact that it just works and it's affordable. As you can see, it's less than $24 right now. Alright, let's talk about the cons to this thing. The things that, in my opinion, they could improve upon. First of all, it can take 10 or 15 seconds for this thing to switch from one input to another. That might not sound like a big deal, but I'm used to a different HDMI switcher that when I hit the button, it's almost instantaneous. Second, this thing doesn't seem to be as responsive to its own remote as my other one is. So sometimes you'll hit the button and I'm not really sure if it never actually received the signal and isn't going to respond at all, or if it's just waiting that 10 to 15 seconds. So you might wait the 10-15 seconds and then it's like realize, oh, well, I guess I gotta hit the button again. And you might have to go through that 2 or 3 times. So that can be really annoying. On that note, it really would have been nice if this thing would have came with an external IR receiver. And what that is the other one, you can have it in a cabinet or behind the TV or somewhere where the reception from the remote would be blocked, and all you have to do is string that little wire out, and it's got a little tiny thing that you can mount just about anywhere, and that's what you point your remote at. It just would have been a nice extra feature if they would have had that as an option with this one. And finally, it might be kind of nitpicking, but I really would have preferred that all the wires go out the back, so when it's sitting on your shelf and you're looking at it, you don't see all the wires coming out the sides. Well, there you go. There's a look at my experience with this particular HDMI switcher. Overall, I would say that it's a decent unit, and since it works and it's affordable, it's definitely worth the money, if you can live with the drawbacks that I listed. However, if you think that those drawbacks would bother you too much, then maybe it's worth looking at a different HDMI switcher. Let me know in the comments what you think. Have you ever used one of these? Did you like it? Do you have any brands or models that you recommend? Thanks so much for watching the video. See you next time. Take a drink. Hey there. Welcome back to the channel. Alright, wait for the motorcycles. You might buy a TV and only have a couple of yeah. Shut up, watch. I'm trying to record. So I also like this that... Finally, I would say the most important... Oh, come on, watch. First, it can take a while... Well, there you go. There's a look at my experience with this particular... Let me know in the comments what you think. Have you ever used one? Finally, in my opinion, one of the biggest pros of this thing is just the facts that it... Let me know in the comments what you think. Have you ever used one of these? Do you have a certain